This is OverDrive on TSN2, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. Hayes and Noodles and the O-Dog are off. I can only assume golfing separately, although it's later in the day now. They're probably not golfing. But at some point this week, they've golfed multiple rounds. So you got me, Brendan Dunlop. Very happy to be alongside Dave Feschuk from the Toronto Star. Have you hit the links this month since I've seen you last?
Yeah, I was out there. Just absolutely embarrassing myself yesterday, actually.
Oh, really?
You mentioned it.
Oh, I'm sorry to bring that up. It's very fresh, my friend.
Did not go well. But you know what? I enjoyed it. Like that's when I was younger and dumber, I used to get really mad and kind of, fume about my games and think, how do I get better at this game? And I'd practice and, grind and try and, scour YouTube for the one tip that would put me over the top.
Oh, you used to watch a lot of YouTube tutorials, eh?
I've watched them all. I mean, I've been taught by every YouTube coach on the planet. And guess what? They all stink because I'm not getting any better.
It's Instagram, man.
But now I'm getting older. I'm like, you know what? I'm not very good at this. So I'm just like there's nice birds out here. The weather's beautiful. I'm getting a nice walk in. It's amazing how it changes. In other words, I'm defeated. I
understand, man. I haven't hit the link since 21. So for me, man, it's just the money that it takes to be good at it. And I don't enjoy it enough.
YouTube is free.
YouTube is free.
You get what you pay for.
Maybe I'll get on that. We'll get into some hockey talk. Gord Miller is in Czechia covering the Gretzky Hlinka Cup. We'll speak to him in a few moments. We were talking in the last block with Sal Capaccio, Buffalo Bills beat reporter, but we got into some really good Sabres talk, which had me and you talking in the break about what that division is going to look like and how much of a shakeup there'll actually be in that division with the Leafs looking to be towards the top as they usually are, but maybe a couple teams that had been there, most notably the Bruins, not being there. So maybe there's an avenue for someone like the Sabres to be more in playoff contention than they were last season. Yeah,
well, it'll be interesting to hear Gord's take on this. But Sal, in the community of Buffalo in general, seems to think the Sabres are shoo-ins to become a playoff team. And I guess the question is, if they're getting in, who's falling out? Mr. Miller, any idea there in the East? If the Sabres are as good as Sal Capaccio and the Buffalo sports community believes, who in the East is not going to make the playoffs when they're in there?
Well, if I knew for sure, I'd live in a mansion in Las Vegas.
You've got one of those, don't you?
I do not.
Okay.
It was put up for sale a couple of years ago. I think, every year, if you look on average, 2 or 3 teams in each conference make the playoffs that didn't the year before. So that's a great question. Who misses? I mean, I think Boston is kind of the one that everyone would naturally look at. Boston's still got a very good team. They're going to struggle down the middle, but if they have a 30-point drop-off, they're still probably a playoff team, right? So
yeah,
I think that there's still lots to like in Boston. I mean, the question for Buffalo is, if you're going to be a playoff team, you're going to need 94, 95 points. Can you do that with Devin Levi in his first full year in goal? Is that I guess that's a big ask. I mean, the issue in Buffalo the last, since Ryan Miller left, really, has been goaltending. Is their goaltending good enough? I think they've got a lot of pieces there, but I do wonder about them in goal, and I wonder about them in terms of depth down the middle up front. But look, I think they should be right in the mix, and I think, Dave, that I have a soft spot for that market. I like Buffalo a lot. I think that, it's not a community where businesses buy the tickets. Those are people that buy the tickets and go every night. And I think they've supported the Sabres through thick and thin, a lot of thin. And so I'd like to see them in contention.
We're talking with Gord Miller on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Gord, smart play selling the mansion in Vegas a couple years ago. They're running out of water. So that was just a very good business
call.
decision on your point.
Yeah.
But appreciate you joining us in the middle of the night. You're over in Czechia covering the Gretzky Hlinka Cup. And how's Team Canada look to you right now, man?
Well, they look good. It's not quite the middle of the night here. It's about 11 o'clock in Bratislava, so not so bad. But, interesting group here. And obviously, when you're talking about under 18s, you're talking, about a lot of players who are in the very, very early stages of development. I think one of the guys who's most interesting is is Michael Misa, who's this is a tournament for 2006 born players. He's a 2007. So he's not eligible for the draft until 2025. He was granted exceptional player status in the Ontario League last year to play as a 15-year-old. Had a very good year for Saginaw. In fact, if you look at all the players who have been granted exceptional playoff status in the OHL, he's the sixth. He had more points per game than any of the others. And that's McDavid, that's Aaron Ekblad, that's John Tavares, Shane Wright. So he's interesting to me. I think overall what's really interesting, this year as opposed to last year Canada had a really small team. And really the story of this past draft, the 2023 draft, was how small some of the top-end players were. This Canadian team is gigantic. A lot of really good, bigger players. And that's intriguing to me because when you saw teams at the draft that made picks that you might consider something of a reach, two of Arizona's picks, for example, they reached for size. And so this year, you may not have to do that. Macklin Celebrini is not here. He had shoulder surgery. He might go first overall. He's a pretty big player. Sam Dickinson, who's a defenseman here playing for Canada from the London Knights, is already 6'3", 195 pounds at age 17. There's some really good players here who are also pretty big. And I think the pendulum is swinging in the NHL, especially on defense, back towards big players. Mm-hmm. And I think that there are some teams that, they won't come out and say it publicly, but there are teams that simply won't look at defensemen under 6 foot or 6'1". They just won't.
Tell that to the Toronto Maple Leafs, Gord. But anyway, we'll move on.
No, and that's a philosophical argument. And certainly, under Kyle Dubas, the Leafs had, if you want to say it, hype, but the Leafs, I think, had an organizational philosophy that undersized players, the small players, were undervalued, and that big players were overvalued. But if you look at the recent history in the NHL, whether it's Vegas this last year, certainly Colorado the year before, Tampa back-to-back years, St. Louis, Washington, they had big defense corps. They had size in the back end.
Yeah,
Vegas's D is huge.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, even Cale Makar in Colorado isn't a big punishing player, but he's 6 foot, 6'1".
Right.
So,
and he's got that Sidney Crosby-esque lower half, right? He's a horse on the bottom
right,
end.
But he's not 5'10", 170.
Right. Exactly.
And so that pendulum has, I believe, with talking to NHL people here, is certainly swinging back, especially on defense. I don't think you're going to see 5'10", 170-pound defensemen drafted in the first round. They'll get drafted later, but certainly not high in the first round.
So we know Connor McDavid, Gord, is the best player in hockey, but did we know he was so powerful that he could get his agent the job as president of his hockey team? The move that Jeff Jackson, Connor McDavid's agent, is now the CEO of hockey operations for the Edmonton Oilers. What do you make of that move?
Interesting. I mean, first of all, Jeff Jackson is a smart guy and has made his way in the business very well, in the agent business. So I think on one hand, it's somewhat dismissive of his abilities to just view him as Connor McDavid's agent.
I'm just kidding. However, I was sort of exaggerating.
But that's a lot of how this is being discussed.
Sure.
However, he was Connor McDavid's agent.
Yes.
I mean, unmistakable. And I think there's always been a belief, about the Oilers that, keeping McDavid happy is a priority, as it should be. And I think that, look, McDavid's got 3 years to go in his contract, which is a ways out yet. But I think the key question in Edmonton, Ken Holland's going into the last year of his contract, is what is the organizational philosophy there? And I think it has to be to win now.
Oh, yeah.
But that means, potentially shedding prospects, trading away draft picks, to go for it. Now, they're obviously constrained within the limits of the cap, but that's, I think that is probably their approach. That's what McDavid would want. But there are ramifications to that, one of which is your franchise could be a smoking crater in 6 years.
Well, he's 27 years old in January, Gord. It's not like they got a lot of time here.
No, I agree with you, but if you are going all in, like if you're saying we're pulling out the stops, we're going for it here, and we're not going to worry about the future at all. That's fine to say, but if you don't win and it doesn't work, then you have nothing. He walks, and you've given away your prospects and your picks. So what do you have remaining? But I think, look, I remember when Ken Holland took the job, he said to me, how often do you start with a team with two of the best players in the world?
Right.
And they have two of the best players in the world. The issue has been what they surround them with. And I think Ken Holland's done a very good job there. I mean, I think the Oilers are much better today than they were when Ken Holland took over. They suffered a devastating blow when Oscar Klefbom had the career-ending shoulder injury. That was an absolutely crushing blow because he looked like a number one defenseman. Kill penalties, play on the power play, play 25 minutes a night. Like just a homegrown player, that's a devastating blow. But here they are, and I think that with Jeff Jackson in place and in position to hire Ken Holland's replacement, with obviously the ear of Connor McDavid, I don't think they'll sit there and be cautious at all.
Here's a great August 3rd Toronto Sports Radio question for you, Gord. Who's closer to lifting a Stanley Cup, the Edmonton Oilers or the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Well, I guess if you're going to the Vegas odds makers, you'd say Edmonton, right?
Vegas knows that Toronto likes to spend, though. I think they would tilt the lines in favor of the Leafs because they want to bring in the action.
Well, that's a good question. I think that the Leafs still have a very good team, and I think that I would give the slight edge to Toronto in that department. Because I think, the Leafs have the high-end offensive players as well. Probably a little more depth. But it's close. I mean, overall, where do they fit? I guess the other question is, where do they fit? In terms of, are they among the top 5 favorites to win the Cup?
Yeah. No, it's a good question, Gord. I mean, obviously, if you go
because I think if you're going for it, you've got to be realistic and say, okay, are we one of the top 5 teams to win the Cup?
I think they both are.
Are you better? Are you better than? Okay, so Vegas, Colorado, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tampa is still in the discussion.
Yeah.
So are you one of the teams that fits into that 5th spot? Not necessarily that order, but is among those top 5. I mean, I don't see either team being in the same category, to be honest, as Vegas or Colorado.
All right, well, let's get your take, Gord. I haven't talked to you about the Leafs since the summer started here, and new GM in town in Brad Treliving. He's tried to start putting a stamp on this thing with mostly some one-year deals to the likes of Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi and John Klingberg. What have you made of the short tenure in Toronto of Brad Treliving?
Well, I think it takes time to put your imprint on a team, obviously. I mean, he came in, the scouting had already been done, so he's not going to have much impact on the draft. And, some of their key players, are under contract. I think, the Nylander one is really interesting. The Nylander contract is the one that is going to have a lot to say about his sort of philosophy and imprint on the organization. And he may just play it out. Maybe you just let Nylander play it out and see where it goes. And the idea that you get nothing for the player if he leaves is kind of a misnomer now because you get his cap space.
Yes.
Now, the cap's going to go up probably pretty substantially next summer. So you're going to account for that, but you've got Matthews to get done and all that. I think that, I like the move that Tree Living made. I think the addition of Bertuzzi is terrific. Domi is a low risk move for them with lots of upside. Klingberg, he's a puck mover. Yeah. I mean, I still wonder, and, Dave, we've had this conversation on this show for, 5 years. Do the Leafs have a true number one defenseman?
Oh, the answer is no, but Morgan Riley will do.
Okay. Well, okay. So the issue is they've never really been able to address that. And is their goaltending addressed?
Well, you got to believe in Ilya Samsonov, and there's a lot of hope that Joe Wall can actually, overachieve.
Sure. So I mean, I still, the question I have about the Leafs is this defense core, built for 4 rounds?
Yeah.
That's the question I would have. I mean,
it doesn't.
Maybe it is. That to me is the key question.
Those 5 wins didn't impress you this year, Gord? Those 5 playoff wins didn't impress you?
Well, they won. They did win a round. I mean, look, it's and listen, we watched Washington face plant for years and then win the cup. So, but they did it with a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman. And I've said this for a long time. I think if you look through the last 20 years of Stanley Cup champions, with the exception of Carolina in 2006, every Stanley Cup champion has had a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman. You can put an asterisk by Pittsburgh in 2016 and 2017 because Letang was hurt at times.
Right.
But he was with them, for long stretches, regular season or playoffs, and he is a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman. He's been in the top 3 in Norris Trophy voting.
For sure.
But clearly Alex Pietrangelo in St. Louis and in Vegas is an enormous difference maker.
Yeah.
And I think when you come back to this tournament, to this Hlinka Gretzky tournament, the teams that are here, and there's more than 200 NHL personnel here, they're trying to find an impact defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for that guy that you can, sort of for 15 years, let him handle things for you. And they're hard to find, especially right-handed shooting D. Mm-hmm. Right-hand shot D are really hard to find. And so if you can, that's an important piece. Center and number 1 D are 2 really tough holes to fill through trades or free agency. And so that's why teams are here looking for them.
We're talking to TSN Hockey play-by-play voice, Gord Miller, who's, I misspoke. You are in Bratislava, Slovakia, not in Czechia, covering the Gretzky Hlinka Cup.
But part of the tournament is in Czechia, so you're not,
Just tonight. I got you in the wrong country tonight.
Yeah. Well, I'm a 20-minute drive away from the Czech border, so.
Oh, that close there. Okay, so it's commuter territory then. We were just speaking about Vancouver and Point Roberts being commuter territory. There you go. I like that, Gord. I also saw the game that you called in what looked like an outdoor horror movie, like the fog in the rink. How high are I would imagine you're not as high as you normally are in NHL rinks in the play-by-play booth, but how difficult was it to call in that fog show?
It wasn't. Well, it was more soupy if you looked at it sort of at low level, like looking across the rink, because obviously you're looking through more fog. Where I was, it was actually quite fine. There was wisps of it, but it wasn't that bad. But certainly for the players, it got pretty foggy. So it was a rainy, humid day. Older building in Trenton, and so fog was an issue. Now it was fine yesterday. There was no humidity in the air, and it was perfectly fine. But I mean, you're asking a lot playing hockey in August, and certainly it can be an issue in some North American buildings, and it was here as well. So, but it was quite a spectacle, that's for sure. But this is a great little tournament. It's only it's a week long. You play 3 round robin games, and then the semifinal and the gold medal game. You're done. It starts Monday. You're done Saturday, and so it's great for me because these players are eligible to play in the World Junior through 26 and 27.
Right.
So Michael Misa is eligible to play for Canada at the World Junior until 2027.
Nice.
So what you're saying is this is basically like a prep tournament for you. This is just you're working on the play-by-play book.
Well, you bookmark them for not this coming World Junior. I mean, for the most part for Canada, you'll have one or two draft-eligible players. So I would think Celebrini would be on the radar for Canada to play this year in Gothenburg. Mm. But these players, certainly in the 2025 World Junior, will be very prominent. These will be guys that will be prominent in the 25 and 26 World Juniors, for sure.
So, Gord, we've skipped over the biggest Toronto news, and I know you're a big music fan. What do you make of Taylor Swift doing 6 dates in Toronto in November? How many of them are you going to be at?
Well, I am a little frustrated, to be honest, because my daughter turned 18 earlier and graduated from high school. And so her father got her tickets to Taylor Swift in Los Angeles.
Whoa, nice
next
gift.
Week. That was a tough pull.
I bet.
Yeah.
Maybe the hardest ticket I've ever tried to get.
Is that show at SoFi? Is that at SoFi?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're a good dad. You're a good dad.
Maybe. So now it turns out I finally do it. I finally get them. And now she's going to Toronto for 5 days.
Right. 6 shows, Gord.
6.
There'll be tickets. The place will be awash in tickets.
Yeah. So does that what does that mean in the Miller household? Does that mean that you got to get these tickets as well?
Well, no. I don't think I do. I mean, she'll be at university outside. She won't be in Toronto. But I mean, I'll try and she can come in for it. But I mean, it's just kind of like it's like climbing Mount Everest and finding out someone else is already there.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Kick in the gut. I can imagine the feeling.
That's pretty good.
Like you climb Mount Everest, your next door neighbor's eating lunch.
Like what? Gord, what did you actually have to do for these tickets?
I know. I don't want to know what it costs. At SoFi is a spectacle, man.
Yeah. It may or may not involve my immortal soul.
Oh.
Okay.
So, but yes, it was a very well. I mean, I tried everywhere. I was trying, the shows in Santa Clara, like up in Northern California, the shows in Seattle, the ones like everywhere. And I finally got 2 for next Wednesday in Los Angeles.
Wow.
All right.
What a score. Well, I mean, there are worse places to send.
What's that, sorry?
I said there are worse places to send your daughter to a show. Like, it's not like you got 2 tickets in Topeka. Like, LA's pretty good.
Yeah, she'll be going and coming back. She has to work.
Oh, okay.
So so she has to work at 4:00 on Thursday. So she's flying back on a 7 a.m. flight from LA, landing at 2:30.
To go to work.
Pick her up at the airport and drive her to work.
All-star dad. That's great, Gord.
Well, no, because I said she couldn't miss work on the Thursday. Not really the all-star dad.
I see. Oh, so you forced it then. Here, I thought you were just like allowing for this to happen, making sure that she had the expert, quick Uber drive to work.
No, she has to be at work. That's
there you go.
We can't entitle them too much. Although I would say that I think she earned a nice graduation present and 18th birthday gift. So she's done a lot of good things, and she's a good person, so she deserves it. But it'll be made clear to her well into her 30s how difficult this was.
Yeah, it's you'll find a spot to bring it up again. That's definitely the FanDuel odds that story's getting in the wedding speech are pretty high there, Gord. So all-star dad in my books, my friend. Appreciate this, Gord. This was excellent. Enjoy the rest of your time over there in Slovakia and in Czechia, and make some time to yourself. Not all work, okay? There's got to be something good, some good drink to enjoy out there before you get to come home.
As Mr. Feschuk can attest, having traveled with me before, that is never a problem.
There you go. Gord Miller joining us in the Maple Toyota hotline. Build your next dream Toyota at Maple Toyota and check out Maple Toyota's pre-owned inventory arriving daily. It's time to Toyota. Visit mapletoyota.com. Have you been to Czechia with Gord Miller? I am a bit envious of all of the people in our industry that you would have had time to travel with and enjoy a beer with. Like, as a studio guy, I don't get that.
No, I've been incredibly lucky. Yeah, one of my earliest experiences covering the World Junior was a World Junior in Prague and Pardubice, both in Czechia. We call it the Czech Republic back then. I think there's
so
still
did the world.
My understanding is there are a lot of Czechs who prefer it just be called the Czech Republic. They don't like this whole Czechia thing that they've come up with. But anyway, that's a whole different debate. But yeah, I was I wasn't that young, but I was maybe my second World Junior, I think it was, and the wonderful lads from TSN, Gord Miller and his partner at the time, Pierre Maguire, they chauffeured me around to Prague. It was awesome. I got to commute to the rink with them and learned a lot about hockey and the world, just, learning at their feet, the young apprentice.
There you go. Long before it was an English bachelor party capital.
Yeah.
It was a hockey hub for
Is that what it
journalists.
is? Is that
Oh,
what
it
it's
is.
known as?
Oh, massive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to a bachelor party in Budapest, English friend of mine. There was 20 of us. I was the only non-Brit. And when I turned up at the airport and told UK Customs that I was here for a bachelor party, he didn't even look up from the passport, stamped and it says, Prague or Budapest, mate?
Is that right?
Budapest. He's like, nice one, mate. Enjoy it.
So it's like Nashville is the bachelorette parties for the Americans, and Budapest and Prague are the bachelor parties for the English. I did not know this.
That's it. Stag do's, they called them, though.
Okay.
Not bachelor parties.
Stag what?
Stag do's.
Stag dudes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of English terminology that would never be spoken on this show if I wasn't in this host seat position.
I'm learning a lot.
That's how it happens.
Great
my
to be
friend.
here.
Well, hopefully you are learning a lot and enjoying too. Lots more to come on OverDrive here on TSN2, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. Back on OverDrive, my name is Brendan Dunlop, alongside Dave Feschuk, filling in for Hayes Noodles and the O-Dog. It's very rare, Dave, that I don't know what to say or when to say it. But in that specific situation, when we've got Taylor Swift on the radio bringing us in to this segment, I didn't know when I was supposed to speak.
Yeah.
It's like a slow build that. I was waiting for the beat drop. I didn't know.
Very sultry.
Yeah. I hope I did that right for you, Luca. I hope I timed that out.
Good job, Luca.
Yeah. Here we are.
Yeah, hey, it's Tay Day.
Honestly,
in Toronto,
on OverDrive,
baby.
we are ODing on Taylor Swift
Yes.
talk. We had 10 minutes with Gord Miller about sending his daughter to SoFi Stadium to watch Taylor Swift.
And apparently, possibly, forking over multiple mortgage payments to do so.
It seems like that may have been the case.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's why he was so hesitant to get into the story, but at the same time, he couldn't not do it. What's the most that you've spent on a ticket?
Oh, I'm a cheapskate, man.
Yeah?
Like when you grow up getting into sporting it for free, as sports writers do.
But even with your son, there's not one thing you've just splurged on.
No,
Really?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I have. I can't remember. My whole thing is I'm always looking for the cheapest deal. My great claim to fame as a ticket procurer
Okay.
is that I once saw a no-hitter thrown in Major League Baseball, and no word of a lie, I paid 85 cents for the ticket
Wow.
on StubHub. It was at Angels Stadium, Jared Weaver, and the tickets were just ridiculously cheap.
85 cents on StubHub?
It was literally 85 cents, and then the fees on top of that.
Yeah. But
it was
the sale ticket was 85 cents.
No, but it was Angel Stadium. The Angels weren't very good. They don't get great credit. Maybe Tani era, I'm not sure what their attendance is like, but back then, this was maybe 8 or 9 years ago when Jared Weaver threw in a hitter. I think it's his only no hitter. But I got in for pennies. Okay, and I was just so happy to be there because it's a beautiful place to watch a baseball game.
Yeah, I saw Shohei pitch
incredible.
this month there.
It's
last month.
Orange County. You can see the mountains. The weather's obviously awesome. And I was just kind of roaming around the stadium. I just, I was there on my own. I was out there for some sort of sports trip. I can't remember which one. And he starts, it becomes apparent that he's on the verge of a no-hitter. And I was roaming around. I picked out a seat behind home plate because there were plenty of seats available.
So what inning is this where you grab these tickets?
Maybe I was there for the whole game.
Oh, sorry.
But then, but I was just roaming around. I had seats in the outfield, but then there were so many seats you could basically sit anywhere. I was just seeing the park, grabbing a beer here, going over here, checking out this concession stand between innings, and just kind of learning about the park. I've been there a few times, and then by the end of it, it's getting exciting. He's seventh inning, he's got the no hitter going. I ended up, sort of setting up camp behind home plate at one point, and I realized I was sitting right behind his parents.
Oh, wow.
Jared Weaver's parents were in the crowd, and they were showing them on the broadcast, and I sort of caught wind of that. And so it was a huge moment, right? It was pretty exciting to be a part of. The only time I've ever seen one in person is that moment. I've watched plenty on TV, but so when he got the no-hitter, it was a nice evening. But I was just proudest that I'd only paid 85 cents.
And that's the story.
That is the story.
I paid 1,300 euros for a ticket to see Portugal, France in the Euro 2016 final in Paris.
That seems insane.
I paid for the ticket. That was not a second hand. That was from UEFA. Once the teams are set. So that's the highest price ticket you can get. And I'll tell you, it was worth triple because Portugal won. And that's what I want to see.
Okay.
Grappler, more likely to happen that you get to half of the questions you want to ask us, or that I find a way to derail the show with more personal talk about our expenditures and sporting outings?
That's a tough one. I guess only time will tell, right?
I guess so. Only time will tell. Well, I'll leave you as much time as we got, buddy, for more likely to happen. You don't have any imaging for this? We didn't do the meeting. There's no segment intro that's going to come in?
I feel like in terms of actually doing imaging and intros for, all the bits and games that we do on this show, we like to think that there's, with the ones we'll do, imaging for, there's at least some originality behind it. Us doing more likely to happen, something tells me that's been done on some sort of radio or TV program at some point over, however many years radio and television sports talk shows have been around. So
you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just got to make the wheel run smooth, okay?
All right.
Roll smooth.
That being said, more likely to happen first. Dame Lillard gets his way and is traded to Miami, or James Harden's trade request is met by the Sixers.
Wow, I gotta think this Dame Lillard thing is going to come to a head.
Mm-hmm.
As much as it's outraged the NBA in a lot of ways, and we know the NBA sent a memo to teams saying, tisk, 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 don't listen to Dame Lillard's nasty agent when he says that Dame Lillard will not play for you or will not be happy playing for you, because guess what? You can trade for him if you want to, and they'll be held to pay if he does not comply. It's lining up to me like, Miami's going to get him. I'm just not sure when, but I just don't get the sense that there's any trade value in James Harden for the Sixers, and they may have to roll with that. So I think the more likely to happen sooner is Lillard going to South Beach.
As hard as this trade will be for the Heat to facilitate, because it will involve multiple teams, they are the team best suited to be able to pull it off, to involve the players. And I wouldn't put it, I wouldn't be against the thought if someone said that here are the odds that James Harden will be involved in a multi-team trade that involves Dame Lillard going to Miami.
There's potential.
So I think that it's more likely that Dame goes, because I really think that the Sixers just don't have a lot of options. And as difficult as it is for the Heat to pull off that trade for Dame Lillard right now, I think it's the Mavericks that seem to be the only team interested. I trust in the Heat to figure it out and pull it off. So that is more likely to happen.
Yeah, I got to think it's Lillard as well. Like, when's the last time an NBA season passed where James Harden didn't request a trade? Like, I feel like at this point, every team across the NBA and probably leagues over in Europe and wherever, they've had a chance to acquire James Harden, and they choose not to do it. So I got to go Lillard as well. But anyways, moving on. More likely to happen first, number 2. Masai Ujiri actually trades an impending free agent for assets, or Brendan Shanahan finally okays the trade of one of the Maple Leafs' core 4.
Ooh.
Whoa, this is a doozy.
Yeah, that is.
This is the heart of the matter in this town.
Oh, man, there's so many factors at play. I think that the Raptors probably have more options to make that happen. Rather than Masai would have more options in front of him that he sees as viable, where I think Brad Treliving and Brendan Shanahan don't actually know what the right move is yet. So more likely to happen is Masai, and there's less pressure on him to do it as well, I think.
Yeah.
Even though he's under the gun, there's less pressure on him to make that move that could get it right, as opposed to the Leafs have to get that move right.
Yeah. No, I think, look, this is an interesting one, because both guys, Brendan Shanahan and Masai Ujiri, they're stubborn dudes.
Yeah.
And, Brendan Shanahan's told us this is going to work this way. And, he's got an 11-year guarantee. He's got a couple years left on it. He's going to keep going, I think, if it's his choice. Now, the Nylander negotiation, if that thing hits a roadblock, maybe that'll be the one that forces them to say, we got to trade one of the core 4. So I think it's more likely that Masai trades Pascal Siakam, but all that said, he's also stubborn, also overvalues his players, or has a reputation of doing so. And I think the big buzz was at Summer League in Vegas, where everybody was coming up to my colleague Doug Smith, who was down there for the Toronto Star, saying, when are they going to trade him? When are they going to trade him? Trade's happening tonight, right, Doug? Trade's happening tomorrow, right, Doug? Trade didn't happen.
No.
Everybody was expecting it to happen. And I think if they wanted to trade him that badly, they probably would have traded him by now. So I think both these guys, Shanny and Masai Ujiri, they're locked in this eternal loop where they just can't go away from what they're doing. And I'm not sure what's going to shake them out of it.
Poor Doug, just getting hounded at Summer League as the Toronto expert.
Yeah. Well, good for Doug.
Okay, moving on. All right, I am going to mess up at least one of these names, so I apologize in advance. More likely to happen first. TFC makes their money back by selling Insigne or Bernadeschi.
Whoa, look at this guy. Eh?
And I promise it is not written out phonetically in front of me. I promise it is not.
Fantastico bello.
Grazie. Or Soccer Canada trades out Bev Priestman for a new coach after the women's national team's lifeless performance at the World Cup.
Oh, he sharpened the knives with that description too, eh? Lifeless. Yeah. Did you write that?
I don't know. Who did? Was it the grappler? Look, I mean, I'm outraged by the lifeless performance at the World Cup of soccer by our women's national team.
Yeah.
Like I'd come to expect more from that team. And look, I'm not sure if the coaching situation is the issue because there's so many other issues at Canada Soccer.
There are.
Like we know about the financial issues. We know about the fact that there's essentially a player revolt at times. They've been on this women's national team's been on strike within the last handful of months. They came to an agreement over salary that they did not like, and they made it known publicly they did not like it, and they said it's not over. So how much can you lay on the coach? But I'll tell you what, I didn't like the way Bev Priestman comported herself. For her to say I don't blame my players for this. Like, well, who else? If we're not blaming the players, maybe we got to blame you. That's the only thing. That's my small brain comes to the conclusion that if it's not on the players, it's got to be on the coach. So I'm more inclined to think they're going to move off Bev Priestman because you'd know better than I would, but is it going to be easy to sell two grumpy Italians who've been underperforming?
Well, there's a new player in town that makes things different. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Oh, yeah.
And for the attractive and appealing name that Lorenzo Insigne is, money is no barrier for the Saudis. And there's been rumors out there that Sebastian Jovinko's old club in Riyadh, Al Hilal, want Lorenzo Insigne. And I just think that the situation with Canada Soccer, particularly with finding someone to replace Bev Priestman and, those involved with the women's team believing that's the right move, I don't think there's as many people as there would be in the Toronto FC side of things that if a feasible offer presented itself, that they would take that offer. So more likely is Insigne before Bernadeschi goes, but I do think that Bernadeschi leaves as well before the end of the calendar year.
And Brendan, I actually have a question for you in terms of I mean, not that, I guess John Herdman's future is something that's, I think, also somewhat in question as well.
It's been talked about, for sure.
For both the men's and the women's sides, just with everything that's gone on with Canada Soccer, obviously the head coach for a national program should be a coveted position. But with everything that's gone on behind the scenes, would there be any, reluctance from potential candidates to actually want to be a coach there based on everything that's happened? Or
100%, there should be.
Okay.
And it's a unique situation in comparison to other national team jobs to begin with, that you don't have other national team head coaches trying to find private financing to be able to make camps work. And that's what John Herdman has done for both the men's and the women's program. And even with the men qualifying for the World Cup for the first time in 36 years and the revenue windfall that is supposed to bring and brings for a lot of other countries, it wasn't enough. And he had to go out and find private financing for that.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's something Carlo Ancelotti would ever do. I don't think that that's something that Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola would ever do. And if they took national team jobs on this side of the world, it would be the U.S. job, and they wouldn't be doing that part. So it'd be very difficult to move off of those two, I think. But, obviously both of the men's and women's team didn't reach the performances people expected. We'll get into that women's conversation with Amy Walsh, who called the matches, did color commentary on TSN for this Women's World Cup. I'm very excited to hear her take. But I do think that one of the Italians leaves TFC first, my friend.
Okay, there we go. Moving on to more likely to happen first, number 4. The Sharks sell high on Erik Karlsson after a Norris Trophy season, or the Winnipeg Jets deal Vezina-winning goaltender Connor Hellebuyck rather than giving him the contract extension he's seeking.
Ooh. I don't know if I got an answer there.
That's a tough one.
That's very sharp.
I gotta think it's Karlsson. I gotta think Karlsson is going to be moved here. Mike Greer, now you got a rookie GM there, and Mike Greer, who's trying to make this deal. All kinds of rumors swirling about who might be in play. You got to sell high on this guy. There's no better time. You know you're not going to be very good for quite a few years. This guy is still good and can make impact on a contending team. Whereas with Hellebuyck, I think, look, there's a chance that he's going to want too much money. I'm not sure I'm comfortable. Even though the guy has won a Vezina, he has been an elite goaltender in the league. he hasn't been perfect. There's no such thing as predictable in the goaltending business. I'm not sure I want to give a goaltender the kind of money he's going to be seeking, probably something in the range of $9.5 million. So,
yeah.
But I think so. Both are possible, but I'd go Karlsson.
I'd go Karlsson as well. I have the same feelings about the money, that there aren't too many other teams that might be willing to write that check for if it's 9 or 9.5, but that maybe the Jets do reward him for some loyalty. So I think more likely to happen that it would be smart of Mike Grier to find a move to sell high, and he might be more likely to do so.
Dave, I got to ask though. I mean, you talk about unpredictability in the goaltending position. I mean, before last season, what was predictable about it? I mean, the only thing predictable about Erik Karlsson was that he was gonna get banged up.
Yeah.
So I mean, listen, if this is the Erik Karlsson that he was early in the Sens days, for obviously you want to do whatever you can to get him. But if as much as teams are going to be reluctant to give, and the Jets and other teams might be reluctant to give Hellebuck a long-term deal with however much money, I got to think they'd have those same hesitations when it comes to Karlsson as well.
Look, there's risk on every player. And obviously with Erik Karlsson, there's a huge risk because he's getting into his 30s, and we know the injury history with, the serious Achilles issue and all the rest of it. But look, I mean, the guy, he reestablished himself as the wondrous talent that we knew him to be, right? And the numbers were undeniable. He won the Norris walking away. And so, there's risk, but you also know that this guy can bring it, man. And he carried the Senators to a Stanley Cup final not too long ago, and appears to be back to that type of form. So I think teams are willing to take that risk with a talent that big.
Good points. More likely to happen that I leave us enough time to have a real block and not just to do an ad read, or that we get some more questions in. More likely to happen, we take a break here on OverDrive on TSN2, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. This week, or the end of this week at least, OverDrive bringing you Brennan Dunlop alongside Dave Feschuk from Toronto Star. Had some fun in the last block doing, I forgot the name of the segment. Will this happen? What's more likely to happen?
What's more likely to happen?
Yeah, what's more likely to happen? I remember the names of our segments, or I on air ask you questions about them. The FanDuel odds on that, my friend. Grappler, you got a couple more for us, buddy?
Yes, sir. 2 more as we wrap up the hour here. This isn't more likely to happen first. This is just strictly more likely to happen. More likely to happen, the Blue Jays win the AL East, or the Blue Jays miss the playoffs altogether.
Ooh, more likely they miss the playoffs. It's more likely they miss the playoffs.
Yeah,
the way
I think
that
it's
they
pretty
are right
clear
now.
cut. Like when you look at the way they've struggled against the East, Baltimore's just holding steady,
flying,
holding steady in a way that you just think you've been waiting for the fall off. It's not coming. And what are they now? They're 6.5 back of Baltimore, but they're what is it? They're 4 games ahead of the chasers for that final wild card spot. So it's just doing the simple math. They're closer to being out than they are to being atop the division.
Right. And I also think too, like the teams that are comfortable, teams that have it clicking when they drop a game that they probably didn't deserve to lose, the Orioles being last night against the Blue Jays, they pick it up.
Yeah.
And they they find the wins elsewhere. That's part of the beauty of it being such a long season. When you're on the opposite end of that and you don't get those wins, and you're on the receiving end of a game where you probably should have won, but you just didn't do enough to get the hits right, or you didn't have any luck that night, then it's a lot harder to turn it around.
That's the
Jays
thing.
keeping on that wrong side.
Yeah, they just haven't. It's just not clicking right now, and it's hard to imagine them catching fire right now because
that's what I mean.
It doesn't feel like the pieces are in place for them to go on a run. Now, maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe they will defy the expectations that they've set for themselves. We've seen teams do that, right? There's been sub 500 teams that have gone on to win the World Series, as late as August, right? But I just don't see it here.
I want to be talking about a competitive team in September and meaningful baseball in September, and I'd love to be talking about the Jays in October. But
I think we'll be talking. I do think we'll be talking about meaningful baseball
in September.
I think we will, because that's the beauty of the extra wild card, right? Like there's just so many more teams involved here that it's you're going to have that conversation. But whether or not it's going to be a positive story or not, or whether this is going to be a team just kind of hanging by a thread, it feels like they might be hanging by a thread for quite a few weeks here.
I think so
if
too.
they keep playing the way they're playing.
And pressure's a big weight, and they got pressure on some of the teams they'll be battling with, like the Angels and the Mariners, don't really have that.
Well, the Angels have got pressure because they got to show Ohtani.
Well,
something.
yeah. Man, what's more likely to happen? That they make the playoffs and keep Shohei Ohtani, or they don't make the playoffs and he leaves?
Well,
I don't know if
they're
making the
rolling
playoffs
the
keeps
dice.
them.
They're rolling the dice.
I guess we don't have time for one more, Grappler. I had to go on the Ohtani
we can
route.
squeeze it in quickly. More likely to happen: Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs repeat as Super Bowl champions, or Bill Belichick is fired before the 2024 season.
Oh, that's the question you give us with 45 seconds left? Wow.
Look, man, this is an interesting one because the last team to repeat as Super Bowl champions, of course.
They call them world champions.
World champion. Yeah, in the States, they call them world champions. It was the Belichick's Patriots 20 years ago, 2003, 2004, right? So I don't like the chances of anybody repeating. So I'm going to go more likely to happen, Belichick getting the axe from Robert Kraft.
Yeah, I think Belichick too, which is wild. This is OverDrive on TSN 2, TSN 1050, and the iHeartRadio app.